Hello! How are you all? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Peyton and I'm here to do my May wrap-up, and we can address the very bright red elephant in the room.
Oh my god, make it fierce, do something distracting. So I think I did that in my face.
I get my hair lightened and brightened. Whenever I'm like feeling like I need a really big change, usually my hair is the first thing on the chopping block, and I really like it. It's really fun, but it is very, very bright. It's very different what color my hair has been the last few months. I change my color a lot, but it's mostly some variation of red, but this is the brightest it's ever been. Getting back to books, I read 8 books this month. It's a really weird month, really all over the place. Very heavy on the extreme horror this month. There's 1 thriller, 6 extreme horror, and 1 YA fantasy. Let's just start. This will probably be a very quick video. I'll go in order of what I read first to last because, yeah, like I said, there's not really a big variation in what I read this month. Like I said, most of this month consisted of a dark thriller, extreme horror, and even the YA fantasy I read had some darker themes throughout or explored darker content. With that in mind, please check trigger warnings for all of these. I'm going to talk about all the trigger warnings. All of them are encapsulated in this month of reading. The first 3 books I read this month were when I was traveling in Japan, when we were on very long flights or on trains. I just wanted something really quick and bingeable to read. For me, usually lands in the more dark thriller, more horror, or extreme horror, just because I feel like it holds my attention the most. First book I read was Appetite for Innocence by Lucinda Berry. This is the second Lucinda Berry I've read. I read Saving Noah last year. It was such a sad and disturbing book. She has a very large bibliography right now. It's very popular on TikTok for her thrillers, and they're very twisty-turny and very shocking. This is one of her highest rated thrillers on Goodreads, so I thought, why not? It was on KU, I think. I was just like, download, let's try it out. I finished it on my first flight to LA. It's not a long book. Anyway, this is about a serial rapist who preys on teenage girls. He's only interested in virgins. He hunts them by following their online social media presence and targets them from all across the country. Once he's captured them, he keeps them locked in his basement, basically grooming them. And when he's done with them, he murders them. So yeah, not very light and easy reading I chose for myself for my first flight. Girl that he just abducted is named Ella, and Ella is a fighter. Ella does everything she can to get out. The other girl that she's captured with, Sarah, has been a captive of his for going on 5 years. She was very young when she was abducted. She kind of views her captor as hers and is very protective of him because she's been brainwashed to feel like this is her everything. Without him, she's nothing. Without him, she doesn't know what to do, and she's been brainwashed to protect him and their life together and what he has been doing. Ella escapes, and Sarah as well is taken with her. It goes back and forth between when they were captive and when they are released. Their abductor is still on the run, so it's very tense situation. It's a lot of trauma that these girls are dealing with and having to work through. Basically, that's the plot. I did not like it. I gave it 2 stars, and not necessarily for the content. There wasn't a lot behind closed doors, that type of writing. It was very much written in a way where you didn't have to question what was happening. She can be a very shocking writer. But I will say, even with that, maybe it's because this was one of her first books, the writing wasn't that great. It didn't feel very polished. It didn't feel like it had been edited very well. The dialogue was so frustrating. The mother in this book, Ella's mother. Oh, I wanted to deck her. She was the most frustrating character I've come across. And honestly, I think I felt that way about the mom in Saving Noah. Like, they were so frustrating. So incredibly naive and frustrating characters that you just wanted to push them over. That's me being nice. I didn't love it. The ending was very predictable. A lot of the stuff that happens in this book, and I think Lucinda Berry has also worked for as a child psychologist or childhood trauma advocate, something like that. She's worked in what they're described in this book, like the aftermath, like the healing and trauma portion. And I think that some of the decisions that were made on behalf of Ella and Sarah, I don't think that would ever happen. I don't think that would ever be allowed. I guess you kind of had to suspend some disbelief disbelief in this book, but it was still just like not, it wasn't one of my favorite thrillers I've ever read. Kind of crazy this is one of her highest rated ones, that it's just, I didn't get it. I didn't see it. I was very angry after the book ended. It's very slow paced, but you wouldn't think it would be for two girls who have gone through such horrible things. How they cope after they're free, like you think it would be a very engaging, quick read, especially under the thriller genre, but it wasn't. It was very meh. Sorry about the lighting. It has not been sunny in days. There's been no sun. It's just been cloudy and overcast and stormy and rainy, and normally I don't mind, but it's been days of it. The next book I read on my trip was on the second flight. We had a 12-hour flight into Haneda Airport in Tokyo. So this was a very quick read before I eventually fell asleep. Blue Jay by Megan Stockton. This was very surprising. This was a crazy book. This is about three self-proclaimed edgelords, Noah, Jack, and Phil, bond over their love of horror, extreme horror memorabilia, VHSs. That stuff's fine. But then they also are very interested in crime scene photos and death photos, torture videos, snuff, gore, dark web stuff. One of them finds themselves at a private club that offers an immersive horror experience, and things quickly go very south. I didn't really feel bad for any of the characters. I thought they were very awful. I think all of them were pretty awful except one. I did feel bad for one of the guys. I did actually feel bad for one of the guys. There's a lot of body horror and torture, very graphic violence. This book gave very much Hostel vibes. I'm not necessarily into that type of horror, but I still really liked this book. I thought it was written very well. The horror aspect was really good. I didn't really enjoy how the women were written in this book. They were described as really large or ugly, and the ending was very abrupt, but I did overall like it as an extreme horror shock factor read. I wouldn't say it disappoints in that arena. It was a very crazy read. I think I gave this like 3.5 stars. That is Blue Jay. The next book I read, I was so happy that it came out in time for my trip so I could read it because I love this author so much. He's one of my favorite newer discoveries with horror, and if you haven't read him and you're feeling like, oh, what I've read, the horror genre is kind of getting a little tired, kind of been reading the same thing and it's just not wowing me, kind of thinking that there's just no newness out there, oh, then check out David Sodergren. I love David Sodergren, and he had a new book come out called Rotten Tommy. This was so fun. This was so wild. I could not put it down. I read it very quickly when we were on trains going back from Kyoto to Tokyo. This very much gives The Ring vibes, also haunted videotape, haunted VHS. I love how he writes because books are so cinematic. Like, they would be such good horror movies, and they remind me of a lot of my favorite horror movies growing up. A very good mix of camp, but also like really good gore and storytelling, characters. Like, I really like David Sodergren. So this is about a woman named Becky who's in her mid-40s. Her mother vanished when she was a very small girl, and no one really knows what happened to her, and no one really seems to really care except her. She's always very much cared what happened to her mother. But at this point, she's in her mid-40s and she's almost like given up hope of ever finding out what really happened. So Becky and her husband are doing renovations on their home, and the contractors knock down a wall. Behind this wall is this box that has these videotapes on them called Rumpelskins, I think is the name. What they think is this children's show that never really got off the ground because Becky's mom was a well-known actress, and this may have been something she had worked on. She starts watching the tape. She's drawn into this like incredibly dark, horrific mystery after viewing these tapes. Discovers that she's also awakened something that has been living in this tape, and it wants her. And she doesn't know why it wants her. She doesn't know how it's connected to her mother. She doesn't know anything. But then people start dropping like flies around her. It's such a bizarre fever dream of a book, and the afterword, David Sodergren took a lot of inspiration from like very surrealist horror. A lot of David Lynch films were referenced when he was writing this book, which I think is so cool. I really enjoyed it. It was super fun. The kills were so sick. One kill in particular is like cemented in my brain. I was like, oh my god, that was so horrible. But when it comes to this one character, you're like, oh, thank god this happened. Yeah, I really liked it. It also has, Becky has autism, and she has been newly diagnosed the last couple of years, and I thought her representation was really well written. He's never really seen a main character in horror portrayed as such, and I thought that was really great. I really liked Rotten Tommy. Alright, getting into books I read for my previous video where I read extreme horror for a week. Yes, I made it out on the other side. I've survived. I definitely need a break from extreme horror, but these are the books I read during that vlog. I'll go through these fairly quickly because you'll find more extensive thoughts in that vlog, but the books I read for that: Zola by D.E. McCluskey, And it's hands down the most disgusting book I've ever read in my life. I will probably never read another book by him. I know why this is so popular, because it's absolutely vile. Yeah, I read that. That's all I have to say about it. Other book I read for that blog was In the Miso Soup by Ryu Murakami. This is translated Japanese extreme horror. The same author who also wrote Audition, if you know what that is, the horror movie and the book. But In the Miso Soup follows a tour guide named Kenji, and he's taking an American tourist named Frank through the more of like a sex tourist. And Frank starts acting weirder and weirder and more sketchy, and he's really freaking Kenji out. And the tension and the stress in this is so strong, and the buildup is so strong. Oh, I like felt so anxious reading this book that when it's finally released, I was like, holy crap. Yeah, I liked it. I did feel like the latter half of the book was a little meandering, but I still overall liked the book. I will definitely read more Ryu Murakami. Yeah, that's gonna be so soup. I also read, which I still don't know how I feel about this book, I read Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Bright. This follows a serial killer named Andrew Compton who teams up with another serial killer named Jay, all set in New Orleans in the French Quarter, as they come together and realize they have shared interest and shared taste and shared hobbies. They set their sights on a Vietnamese American runaway named Tran. It's inspired by the true crime case of Jeffrey Dahmer and Dennis Nielsen. So if you know about those cases, are wondering, oh, could it be worse than what's in those cases? Yes and no. Like I think that was my main problem with it. I think for me it would have been a stronger book if they had been more original characters. I think Poppy Z. Bright tried to make them more artistic in a way and give them like a little bit more of a personality and not so like dark and brooding like Dahmer, or so just weird and bizarre like Dennis Nielsen. I think they try to give them like a little bit of a swagger and personality, and they're described as very beautiful men. I don't know how I felt about it. It was very upsetting. It was very shocking. The ending threw me for a loop. I was like, now I know why this book has a reputation. This was written in the 90s. It's also written with all these characters fearing AIDS and how it's affected the people around them and how they have such a strong fear of it, even though they are inflicting such horrible crimes onto other gay men. That was Exquisite Corpse. And my favorite book of that blog, and one of my favorite books I read this month, was The Black Farm by Elias Withrow. This was such good horror. I really, really liked it. It deals with very, very dark subject matter. I thought it was handled really well. I thought it was written very well. I never thought I would say that the world building was exceptional in a horror book. I thought that was really just reserved for fantasy, because I'm a newer fantasy reader and like world building and like sci-fi, stuff like that. So I never thought I would say that in terms of horror, but world building was so intricate and interesting, and I was like hooked from beginning to end. It was great. The Black Farm follows a couple, Nick and Jess, who after the loss of their baby and a string of other really horrible misfortunes, they decide to end their life together and just fall asleep. But that's not what happens. They wake up in the Black Farm, which is this place between heaven and hell that is this sadistic nightmare landscape. And Nick and Jess get separated, and Nick is trying to find Jess and find a way to escape the Black Farm. That's the main premise, but I really liked it a lot. There's also a follow-up book, which I'm definitely gonna read. I'm gonna get a physical copy of this for sure. This was one of my favorite horror books of the year. I think I saw this on someone's TikTok like months ago, so I marked it for, because I knew I was gonna do this extreme horror vlog. I really liked it. If you can handle the content, like definitely check it out. I really, really liked it. So after that vlog, I definitely needed a little bit of a lift, so I decided when I was looking at my spring TBR what I hadn't read yet and what would kind of fit that bill, and I read A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid. And if you've been watching my vlogs, you know that I read Juniper and Thorn in January, and I absolutely adored it and went out and bought all of her published work. She also has a new release coming in August, which I'm super excited about, but I decided to pick up A Study in Drowning. I really loved it. She is such a killer writer. She's such a beautiful writer. Like just home run after home run with some of this prose. This is about a girl named Effie Sayre, who is the only female student at this architectural college. She desperately wants to study literature, but women are not allowed because stupid male reasons that we're not creative enough. Effie is very much a lover of fairy tales and fantasy and writing her favorite book, Angharad, which has basically been canonized into the lore of this world, and they have a museum about the author. Mirrodin. It's about this mortal girl who falls in love with the Fairy King. Effie has always been haunted by visions of the Fairy King since she was a young child and has never really escaped these visions. Her mom thinks she's like kind of not right. Very anxious girl. I loved how Effie was written and how her anxiety and thought process was written, and I really felt for her and felt connected to her. Anyway, going on with the plot. Effie decides to enter this architectural contest to redesign the late author, Iris Mirrodin, estate. Mirrodin has passed away 6 months prior to the start of this story. When she gets to the house, there's also another student from the literature college named Preston. I loved Preston. I really liked Preston a lot. He's there because something kind of stinks with Mirrodin's life and Angharad, and something just doesn't click for him. He's there to go through documents, letters, whatever, to basically prove his theory that he was a fraud. And they immediately have a dislike of each other because it's Effie's favorite book. It has kept her safe. It has been like a tome for her growing up. That's her hero. When they get there, Effie's like, oh, this is very much a doomed project because the world where this is set, where the house is set, is stormy cliffside manor that's basically falling into the ocean, and it's a basically this disaster project. Stuff starts to come to the surface. Preston and Effie team up to uncover the mystery of this house and this author, and I really liked that part of it. I really liked the mystery element of it, of these two, they're 18, 19, these two kooky kids going around this manor and looking through all these documents and books, and the mystery aspect of it. I really liked it. I really enjoyed this, and yeah, like I said, Ava Reeve was batting 100s with some of this prose. I put damn next to this. There's all these little blurbs at the beginning of the chapters from Angharad, or the lore that Mirrodin left behind. We discussed then the relationship between women and water. When men fall into the sea, they drown. When women meet the water, they transform. It becomes vital to ask, is it a metamorphosis or a homecoming? Ava. Damn, girl. There was also a second reason I picked up this book when I did, because Ava Reeve just announced that there's going to be a second book. I don't know how many books are going to be, what kind of series this is, a duology, whatever, but there's going to be a sequel to A Study in Drowning, so that's why I picked it up. I'm super excited. I gave this a 4.5 because it was very slow in some parts. I wasn't eating it up like I was eating Juniper and Thornot, but I really liked it. I liked it a lot. I thought it was really beautiful, and I love the characters. I loved the setting, coldness of the sea, and falling apart mansion, and books and letters and mystery. Like, I loved all of that, so this was one of my favorite reads of the month too. That's the very weird, all over the place, depressing reading wrap up I had for this month. I'm definitely taking a break from extreme horror for a hot minute, but I'll be back because Summerween is right around the corner and I can't wait to prepare a TBR for that. As always, thank you for clicking. Thank you for watching. I'll have a new video for you soon. Bye!